Well, so why did I create this course platform? In fact, the reason I created this course platform is to share two important reasons that have always inspired me and pushed me forward in life. It's about how to increase my income while working less. So I know it might sometimes seem completely contradictory, but it's something that's realistic and something that can be applied quickly. It can be set up quickly when you also put in the necessary energy. And so that's why I trained and I still train and I still continue to train. And not only in my field of dental surgery, but also in other fields, such as the one that allows me to share my courses and my experience. And all this too is to help and to share what I practice and what I have implemented and improved over decades with mistakes that I have made and which have taught me to move on to improving, but to implementing techniques, processes that I have put in place. And all of this is always with the goal of working better, to work less while increasing income, and to be less stressed at work, because we have a profession as dentists where we work. We're alone, we're the captain of the ship, we have the team, we have our assistants around us, but we carry everything on our backs. And that also leads to, since we have a rather solitary profession, practitioners don't always dare to share their difficulties. We all have difficulties when it comes to working. We're in a profession where we also work. We must not forget, in a space that is very limited in size, we have, well, imagine the size of a mouth. When you're working on a mouth, it's about 3/4 centimeter high and 3/4 centimeter wide. We're working on someone who's alive, let's not forget that. We work on humans, on men, on women, on children, and so we also have a relationship with these patients, with pain, which does not exist in other medical specialties. On top of that, we're working on something that's alive. With a tongue that moves, we have saliva, and our view isn't easy to access. So we have a profession that is subjected to constant stress. What we also note with certain patients, it's this story of energy. We have patients who will drain our energy, while others who are sometimes scared to death to come to the dentist end up having a great experience. So these are details of the daily life of a practitioner in an office. And that's when I started to focus more and more on how I could share my experience with other practitioners in a way that they could apply it in their practice. One of the processes that allow them to work better, to also become aware of certain things that will enable them to work in a more peaceful manner, some things that will allow them to work in a more peaceful way. And that's why I share this with practitioners who have values similar to mine, especially in terms of ethics. So this is what I've set up for now. It's been 3 years since I started this platform. So now it's been since 2008 that I've been an instructor, teacher at the university diploma in implantology from the Denis Sophia University in Antipolis, France. And so we've trained hundreds of practitioners, both male and female, in this specialty of implantology, because these practitioners, these men and women, came because they were interested in the solutions we teach that we share, which allow them to expand their scope of practice in their office. In this case, in terms of implantology, with solutions that are faster, with fewer side effects, and that don't involve difficult complication management compared to others. Traditional techniques that are taught, and these techniques that we share with them, are levers that allow them to offer more solutions to their patients' problems. Because placing implants when you have great bone height, great bone width, and great bone density is very easy. Every practitioner, anyone is used to putting a screw in the wall on the weekend when the wall support is in good condition. When you have a drill that works well, when you don't have a brittle material. Now, in implantology, what we encounter more often are cases where we are faced with patients who have lost bone, who have had removable dentures for many years, so the bone has diminished. There is bone resorption. We have the problem of bone density that exists. And bone density, that doesn't just mean when we have a decrease in bone density, but also in the opposite cases. Too much bone density on atrophic maxillae or mandibles, the bone changes over the years. If it hasn't worked, it changes density. So these are clinical situations that are not always easily manageable with traditional techniques. And that's why we, for I've been practicing my specialty for 30 years. And it's true that we have tools, we have solutions that allow us. There, you see, in the case of total implants, we do a total implantation. It's one shot. It's just one single surgery. We don't go through multiple surgeries. And when I say total implantation, one shot, one single surgery, it's in every scenario. And we have protocols that have been in place for decades where we place implants and then put the prosthesis in the next day. Before, it took us 5 or 6 days. Then it decreased. Now we place the fixed prosthesis on the implants, screwed in 1 day later. So now, it's been over 15 years that I've been participating in this training. And that's where I also saw one of the limitations of in-person training. In-person training, that is to say, I saw colleagues who came to train with us. They were super excited, super motivated. It's because they saw how we could get out of situations. Sometimes they would say, but I've always been told that it was impossible. And so we helped them to actually implement those solutions. We trained them on that. And at the same time, I saw that they had a huge barrier to applying what they had learned in their practice, in their office. Because sometimes when I talk to colleagues or associates, I tell them, so that's it. When I come back to them the next time, the next session, I tell them, so that's it. You fitted this type of implant or such other in the case that they showed me the last time. And there I had the big surprise. Often I got this response from several of them who said, yeah, you know, Felipe, I'm really motivated by everything we're learning with you, everything we're seeing. I love it. It opened my eyes. It opened me up. Fields of application. But the problem I have is that when I return to my little village, when I find myself all alone in my corner in my office, I'm afraid to take the plunge. I'm afraid of messing up. So there you go. They are really motivated, but at the same time, they have barriers that will prevent them from implementing and applying what they've learned. And as a result, it makes them stagnate. And that kind of reaction is completely normal. We're really motivated by what we're learning. And at the same time, our subconscious, which we also call our ego, will always try to send us messages to hold us back. To give you an example, no, don't go there, it's complicated. As much as the ego, the subconscious is super important because it's also there to protect us sometimes. For example, if we're on the edge of a cliff, our ego says, whoa, don't go there, it's dangerous, you're going to fall. But there, when we come in, when we learn, when we implement, we learn new techniques. The first thing our brain does is try to make sure that the new solutions we've learned, it tells us, no, don't go there, it's risky, you might make a mistake, and that's the subconscious. We're not even necessarily aware of it, and there are scientific studies that prove this. So, in response to that, there are two types of individuals. I would say there are those who react to this, there are those who will say, it's okay, I don't care, I'm going for it, I'm diving in, and I'm going. So, that's good on one hand, but at the same time it can be complicated. Because if someone rushes in head first, without setting up safety barriers, it can lead to complications. So, that's one type of individual. And the other one will say, no, I'm afraid of messing up, I'm not going. And so I started researching what could be the reasons that produce these two types of reactions and how precisely to provide solutions to address this and to be able to help these practitioners. So I've read a lot of books. I've read a lot of books on personal development, on mindset, on how we, for the most part, function at the level of the brain, at the level of the conscious, at the level of the subconscious. And one of the points that caught my attention the most, and it's true because I noticed it myself, is that in any training, no matter the field of study, the area, the specialty in which we're training, it could be accounting, it could be finance, it could be anything, marketing, it could be whatever we want. Well, when we do face-to-face training, we only retain on average 10% of what is there. To teach you what is shared, it's something completely normal because unless you're a super genius, being in an in-person training from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., unless you have extraordinary abilities, you can't remember everything that's presented to us. Everything that is taught to us, everything that is shared with us. Why? Because we can't be focused all the time. Even when we write, when we take notes, there are things we're going to miss. It's the same with the brain. We can't be attentive all the time. There's fatigue. There are all those things. So there are a whole bunch of reasons that show that in-person training has its limits. In an in-person training, we're going to cover something in a general way for 1 or 2 days, or on a topic very specific, but it will only concern a part of the activity. And so we're not going to have access to. Moreover, when we're in person, we don't have access. It's not something we can go back to, refer to, and review this training. And that's the same. When I started training in person, whether it was in implantology, periodontology, or orthodontics, I had the same problem. So we're the same. We're always super motivated. We take notes, we write, and sometimes we end up skipping over details that are the most important. What are the teachers going to tell us? It's the little details that make all the difference in our practice. And that's where, when we skip those details, we'll have difficulties really moving up to the next level. We're going to have difficulties, and above all, it's going to take us years and years to understand, simply because we had access to the information at one point, and as a result, we forgot other information. That's how I came up with the idea to create this course platform. I spent time first writing the scripts for my videos, creating the course outline, then filming the videos, editing the videos, and all of that to provide access to dozens and dozens of videos, regardless of the field, that allow practitioners who are training with us to have continuous access 24 hours a day. They can go to any chapter of the video. They can refer to any chapter of the video that relates to a procedure they've scheduled, which they will have in a day or a few days. And so they can anticipate, they can see beforehand, they can watch a similar procedure. And even during surgery, if they encounter a difficulty, they can easily pause the surgery for a few minutes and refer to a video that shows them how to overcome a challenge they might face. In fact, it's nothing more than the implementation of all the gestures and techniques we have access to that help build more confidence. Why? Because we'll be able to review it several times, we'll be able to integrate it. We have this visual memory that we can tap into when we watch this video, because imagine you have your procedure happening the next day. You can watch a similar video the day before, even during the procedure. You can review it. Plus, when we watch these videos, we can pause, we can rewind if we didn't understand something well, whereas in an in-person training, it's very straightforward. Continuing education, so you see all of that. These are small tools that are very practical, but tools that are super important for being able to immerse yourself directly in real time. Also, since I have videos, it's like we're watching this video together. You are my assistant and you're seeing this video live, plus showing the difficulties and not just the successes. That's to be able to actually raise the level and understand, and I'm pretty slow at understanding things. And when I was training, sometimes I would pause the video. On the videos, I go back and sometimes I rewind 2 or 3 or 4 times, but I also take detailed notes like, okay, there was this, and this. Why? Because, well, some people can learn very quickly. There are others who take more time. And I'm more like those who take more time because I can't integrate things very quickly. And so we come back to that. And it's thanks to that that the level increases. It increases quickly. It's like a high-level athlete, a top athlete. For example, someone who plays basketball, an athlete, basketball people, what do? They will make 1,000 basketball hoops a day until it becomes something automatic, recurrent, detail, precision detail, to transform the path to their basket. And in our activity, as in any activity, it is the repetition of the gesture and the understanding of the gesture which makes us increase our ability to handle increasingly complicated cases, and that then becomes automatic. And it allows us to have a much faster growth curve. And at the same time, we learn with these techniques how to reduce our surgery times. And if we reduce our surgery times, we free up a lot more time for ourselves, for his family, for his children, for his leisure activities. And it's here on this course platform that I really wanted to share this with those who come to train in the city. And these techniques honestly allow us to reduce surgery times by 3 or 4 times. There are solutions that exist, solutions that are not always taught in traditional education, even though they exist. And they have been validated by hundreds of practitioners for decades. It's the same for the prosthetic part. We were talking about surgery and implants, but the prosthetic part is just as important in total implantation cases as the surgical part. Now, in the prosthetic part, we've seen that the downtime for placing prosthetics has been significantly reduced. And all of this is also thanks to the evolution of materials, the continuous evolution of materials. The materials that used to take us several days for bridge frameworks because we had to do the wax assembly and then cast the metal. Now, with digital technology, we have materials that are milled. So for the past 10 to 12 years, we had materials made of chrome cobalt for the frameworks. When it was milled, it took an enormous amount of time too. Just making a framework could take 8 to 10 hours, and then we had to assemble the teeth on top. So we've moved on to new materials, and what used to take several days, today, over time, it has been reduced to 3 days to 2 days. And now we make total implant prostheses that are placed 24 hours after the implants are placed. And the prosthetic is just as important as the placement of the implants. So today, I would say that practitioners can't accept a response from a prosthetic lab saying, I need 10 days to make a prosthetic. No, that's completely achievable. No, it's completely achievable. In 24 hours, of course, you're not going to send your work to the lab overnight. Hey, I just did this, you're going to make the prosthetic for me tomorrow. No, that's planned in advance. A total implantation is scheduled ahead of time. It's planned 1 or 2 months in advance. And so we tell the lab on such and such day. At that time, if you have your surgery in the morning, by noon, you have the prosthetic. So they schedule that in their work agenda. And it's completely achievable within a 24-hour period. And that also saves you a huge amount of time. Because let me tell you, what costs you the most in a practice isn't the materials or the supplies you buy, it's your working time. It's your working time. From the moment you reduce your working time, you're going to increase your income, but in a way, you're going to double or triple it simply because when you decrease complications and manage more complex surgeries, imagine you place an implant, even if you have a bone deficit, it takes you 5 minutes with what we teach. At the same time, you're going to have traditional teaching telling you that you need to do a sinus lift, you need to do a graft, and that will require several sessions. It will also inevitably lead to more risks and complications to manage. So all of this, today, you can do your calculations. When you're going to place an implant, from the beginning to the end, when you completed the final prosthetic, how much time did it take you in hours? The same goes for surgical guides. It's the same thing. Surgical guides, they tell you, great, the surgical guide, you place the implant right where it should be. That's perfect. It's perfect precision. That's true. I completely agree. But to make a surgical guide, you first need to know how to place implants. You need to know where to place them. So when you place a surgical guide, it's time consuming because you need to do your planning beforehand. You have to have it made or you make it yourself. Then you need to place it in the mouth. You have the patient, you need to secure it in the mouth. I've seen presentations on how to place an implant with a surgical guide, but when I see that, I say, that's really good. It also moves things forward. Research, but honestly, what takes 5 minutes in one case can take you 2 hours in another case, or even several sessions. So it's all these elements that you need to take into account as well. When you train, no matter what the training is what you're learning there to complicate your practice, or is it there to simplify your practice, yours as well? Simplify. Everything that is done secondarily for your patients, because your patients also judge you on that. They also build your reputation based on the solutions you provide them. So that's why I created, developed, and continue to improve our course platform. It is to work faster in better conditions, to free up more free time. And this course platform also has courses on teaching the appliance in a non-invasive way, on orthodontics, on how to organize a practice, on creating or improving the layout of a practice. For that, I have significant experience because I've already created 6 practices across 3 different continents. So, actually, in this platform, we cover everything related to a practitioner's life, the professional life of a practitioner in a practice. Similarly, whether it's in terms of finances, whether it's about purchasing equipment or materials, on the choices to make, on the investments in equipment that are profitable and those that will just sit at the back of the drawer. But all of this I speak from experience because I too have bought equipment. That cost a fortune. I was enjoying myself at the moment, and as a result I made a bad calculation because that equipment wasn't profitable. And sometimes it took me a lot more time. They were pieces of equipment that were time-consuming to set up and ended up just sitting in the drawer. And there are many who will recognize themselves in that because we've all been through it. So, the story of investing in equipment is super important. 2, what is it for? What's the point of investing in equipment and materials? Of course, the salespeople, they know how to sell it to you. That's because they tell you yes, but you pay taxes, you will pay less taxes because you will invest in equipment. But I would say keep that money for yourself, because even if you're going to pay taxes, at least you'll keep a part of what you didn't invest in that for yourself. So I've been through all of that. It's part of my experience, and that's also what I want to share with practitioners on our platform. We must not forget that equipment and materials representatives, it's normal. Their livelihood comes from selling you equipment. So they are trained for that, whereas we are not trained to sell. We're not trained at all to sell. And so don't forget that they are there to sell. They are paid for what they are going to sell to you. Just like the speakers. I see speakers giving you talks about some magical product, about some magical equipment that solves everything. They only ever show the success stories where everything goes well, to tell you that speakers, they are connected. They are also in cahoots with companies, with implants. And so what they sometimes present, they present on equipment or solutions. If they only show you the successes, start putting up a warning sign, ask yourself a question. And sometimes there's a lack of ethics on the part of those speakers because they will show you something that's great, so you'll buy it. They sometimes have interest in that too. So for my part, I can tell you that I have no interest in any implant equipment company or anything else. Thank you. And everything I say it with sincerity, with transparency, so that everyone asks themselves the right questions before investing in such equipment or such training. Because just in terms of training, what I advise is first of all, get trained and keep training continuously. Even in different types of training, keep training continuously. Why? Because it's super motivating, it's incredibly enriching, and it opens up fields of income and credibility that we sometimes can't even imagine. But then, when choosing training programs, also choose those that show you how to handle complications. All these training programs only show you successes and not the complications, nor how to manage them. So I would say it's better to avoid them because you won't learn anything. From successes, we don't learn anything at all. We learn from failures, and we all have failures. But then, with failures, you also need to know at what level the failures are, what the degree of importance of the failures is. In the training programs you can take, first check if they also teach you how to manage everything that could hypothetically happen behind, because failures in our practice are a percentage that is quite low, regardless of the techniques. But on the other hand, there are techniques where there are more failures, but we're not in the majority. We're not in cases where there are 50% failures. So otherwise that would be impossible. But on the other hand, keep in mind that when you have failures or complications to manage, it eats away at you, it eats away at your mind. And I have examples of that. I remember a student who was doing an internship with a practitioner, an excellent practitioner who performed grafts and did sinus lifts. And all those things, a guy who was super conscientious, serious, who was empathetic, who took care of his patients, and the guy, he wasn't doing well at all. Because when you have to manage even just 2, 3, or 4 failures a year, failures that are complicated with infections, with complications, pain for the patients, honestly, we are human above all. I know that when a patient has pain or things like that, it's something that bothers me. And so that practitioner who had to manage those complications, he was completely demoralized. Why? Because he was managing complex cases. And once again, he was doing surgeries very, very well. But the complications he had to manage were eating up his time. They were inevitably eating up his money. He needed to come back. And when you have a patient to manage with infections that last for more than 6 months, it's something complicated. So our platform is primarily there to share, to help, and to support practitioners in their daily practice with solutions that are simpler, faster, less invasive, and that will help them grow their income while reducing their chair time.